Parashat Metzora, even the term tzaraat, leprosy, we usually translate it as leprosy, right. But we're not clear on that, whether this is the real meaning of the term, because we know leprosy is contagious. It's contagious through certain bodily liquids, and you have to be in close contact with it. It's not a highly contagious disease, but the way the Torah describes it, I think takes out of account the possibility of a contagious disease, because it says that if the disease is spread and covered the whole body, a person is cured and now we can come in. So that's where. I thought somebody said it was for the eczema or something like that. So we don't know exactly. Again, so we don't. I would like to take the symbolic approach now, because anyway we don't know exactly how it worked physically. So first, I want to approach from a symbolic point of view. So this has been widely interpreted in the early sources. The whole idea of leprosy as having to do with lashon hara. That's how usually people deal with this story, that leprosy is about lashon hara. There are other cases, there are certain cases of named people that we know that contracted tzaraat in the Tanakh. The most necessary in order. The first is Moshe. When Hashem tells him, go talk to the Israelites and bring them out of Egypt, he says, they will not listen to me. And then Hashem gives him this very quick leprosy, put your hand in, put your hand out. Okay. So it's an instant one. Then Miriam speaks against Moshe, she contracts leprosy. Next famous person to become a leper is Naaman. That is the general of the army of Aram, or a Syrian general. Maybe was fighting against someone who was using chemical agents. Do we know that? But it's not a joke. But yeah. But anyway, he has leprosy. We don't know why. With him, there's no explanation of why he contracted leprosy. And then in the following chapters in Melachim, in the book of Kings, we read about four people who were cast out because they were lepers, and they were sitting outside the wall while the army of Aram was besieging the city of Shomron. And finally, that's a lesser known case, King Uzziah, which is also called Azariah in Divrei Hayamim, Uzziah or Azariah, who decided he wants to become the high priest. So he entered the Holy of Holies with frankincense, trying to he's breaching the boundaries. And Vatizrach tzaraat b'mitzho, he contracted leprosy in his forehead, and he was quarantined to the end of his life for more than 40 years, maybe even 50 years.
Much less penalty than Aaron's two sons.
Yeah, right. So interesting. You're right. It's an interesting point.
And that
what?
And that person was in Jeremiah.
Who's that?
The last one you told me?
No, the last one is in Melachim. Is in Melachim and Divrei Hayamim. In both Kings and Divrei Hayamim. What?
It sounds like from the literature that leprosy was to go to disease for whatever.
Right. It's hard to find like a common denominator between all these sins. So one lashon hara, we can say, okay, Moshe spoke against the Israelites. That's not, it's shvach, as we say. Miriam spoke against that one. That's clear. Naaman, we don't know. Maybe he was arrogant. Later on, we know that he was arrogant because when he came to the prophet Elisha, and Elisha said, "Go and dip in the Jordan River," he got very upset. He said, "What? I came from Damascus. I have Amana ufarfar halotov Amana ufarfar kol naharot Damascus. I have the mightiest rivers streaming in Syria. Why do I have to dip in the Jordan?" And then they convinced him, maybe, try. What do you have to lose? But the four men who were outside the gate, we don't know who they are, where they came from. And Uzziah has nothing to do with gossip or maybe with arrogance. So
it's the forehead where the tzitz goes.
Yeah, where the tzitz goes, right? So it's exactly where where it should have been the mark of the Kohen Gadol. The high priest wears this sort of golden band here. But anyway, so we have some cases that point towards arrogance, some places that point towards the lashon hara, and some cases which are neutral. We'll put it aside for a second. Let's look at the psukim that describe the process of purification of the Metzora. This is chapter 14. It says this, in verse 2, This shall be the ritual for a leper at the time that he is to be cleansed. When it has been reported to the priest shall go outside the camp. If the priest said that the leper has been healed of his scaly affection, well, they didn't want to write leprosy, but they call him a leper. So the priest shall order 2 live clean birds, cedar wood, crimson stuff, and hyssop to be brought for him who is to be cleansed. So this is like our go-to mixture. It's erez ushnitolat ve'ezov. We use it with paraduma. It's the same, almost the same combination. Cedar tree, crimson stuff. I don't know what's crimson
What's
stuff.
crimson stuff?
I don't know why they translate that.
Stuff in German is crimson material.
Okay, so it's fabric, right? So stuff in the sense of material. So some people translate crimson wool and ezov hyssop, which, by the way, it comes from the Hebrew word ezov. The Greek transliteration was hyssop. Ezov, you hear the same sounds. And ezov is moss, is like this lowly plant that grows in. It's almost like mold.
Like moss.
Yeah.
Is it not like something that goes in with the air and the insects?
Yes.
And,
So it's a wide family. You have some are type of hyssop or ezov are related to oregano or what people call za'atar, and you could smell it when you go on the mountains of Yerushalayim. It's all over. When some says that hyssop is the like a rolling stone gathers no moss, right? That's the thing. Then, so two birds in this. Now, what do they do with that? The priest shall order one of the birds slaughtered over fresh water in an earthen vessel. So the vessel is filled with water, and the bird is slaughtered on top of it. So now what we have is a mixture of blood and water, which symbolically is something that is being stained. I mean, if you think of clear water that you want to drink, now the blood has stained them and it contaminated them. And he shall take the live bird, along with the cedar wood, the crimson stuff, and the hyssop, and dip them together with the live bird in the blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the fresh water. He shall then sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed of the eruption, and cleanse him. And he shall set the live bird free in the open country. So this is the first stage of the process. So many commentators understood that whole thing, especially the last stage of sending the bird free, as saying, this is what happens when you speak Lashon Hara. When you gossip, it goes all over the place. You don't know where it reaches. The idea of the blood over the water is contamination. And so this is how it is associated with Lashon Hara. My problem with this is, so it's not really a ritual of purification. Because we send them off with a deep sense of guilt. If it's really about Lashon Hara, we tell them, you know what, you can never cure it. Which is true, by the way, that like the poet says in Tehillim, Kehitzim Yoreh Hitzim Kemitlahalea. When he speaks about someone who speaks Lashon Hara, he says like shooting arrows. Once you shoot the arrow, you can't bring it back. But so you don't know what is the effect of Lashon Hara. But still, you would expect that in a ceremony of purification, of cleansing, that that it will be final. It will be positive. So something from it is missing here. So I was thinking of like, how else can I understand the tzaraat? Maybe a broader sense. So we spoke several times about the concept of bi-radical root in Tanakh, and the bi-radical root is an idea that originally was the belief of the early grammarians, the time of Rav Saadia Gaon, talking about the 7th, 8th, 9th century, Ibn Janah, Ibn Hayun, all these. They believe that the Hebrew words have a 2-letter root. Later on, this was rejected, and everybody accepted the theory that we have a 3-letter root, like Achal, Shata, Shachav, Yashan, Kafatz, Amad. All of them are triple. They have triple 3 letters. Or they are Nahim. You have a vowel, like Kum, Kuf Vav Mem, Shir, Shin Yudresh, etc. Only recently, like starting with our own Marcus in his book Barzilai, he started with the theory that he was a linguist. He was a religious German Jew, a Yeke, who became later a Hasid. He was very knowledgeable in all Eastern languages, Semitic languages. He wrote a book called Barzilai, where he started developing this theory. Now it's accepted as a valid theory among linguists, and that is that the Hebrew language is a very ancient one, and it evolved from roots that have two letters that were used in a very broad sense to cover everything. And then when people wanted to specify, they just added a third letter to the same root. This way you get a set of roots that are all connected to the original one. One example that Marcus brings, and it's a nice one, is the word peresh, par, which means ox or bull, but also means fertility, virility, strength, something that spreads through, etc., possessions. And now every letter that you add to it in Hebrew, in biblical Hebrew, pere is to grow wild, parad is to spread, para is to multiply, paraz is a city without a wall that could spread on. So every peresh with the third letter is a nuance on the peresh. So this is a tool that helps a lot when you come to try to decipher biblical words. You have to be careful not to mix the biblical and the rabbinical.
That's why there are so many bad translations when people try to do it, because they don't take the right interpretation.
Yeah.
Like you get in the Haggadah and other places sometimes with these
Right.
Shmatika books that they put out there.
Even other Shmatika books, right, where people struggle with the translation of the Tanakh, because the Hebrew language is so compact and also ancient that the nuances, when you start peeling off layers of the language, you just start realizing how intricate, how everything is connected.
Sounds like ancient Greek.
It's more complicated than ancient. I mean, the rabbis were fascinated with the Greek because of its logic and symmetry, whatever. But people who know languages today say that the Hebrew language is like programming. It's very, very well structured. But yeah, the rabbis were very very fond of ancient Greek. Can you imagine that? Let's go back to when we go to look at the biradical root of tzarat. We don't have many words with the two first letters tzadik resh. But let's look first tzadik resh by themselves. Tsar in Hebrew means narrow. Sar is the captain with sin. But tsar with tzadi is a narrow. Also means
like
an enemy. A narrow passage.
You just said it.
Yeah, enemy. Yes, enemy. Because the enemy puts you in a narrow place, in a tight place. Then we have in Tanakh, we have the verb tzadik resh bet tzarav, which is to burn the skin, which is something that limits the growth of the skin in the burnt area. Then there's the word tzara, disaster, which also means, when you feel that you're stuck in a narrow place, there's nowhere to go. That's why we say in the Hallel, min ha-metzar karatiya, anani b'merhavya. You have the exact opposite, metzar, a narrow place. I was in between the straits, and God took me out to the open, merhav, rahav, wide. Then we have, after this we have tzarah, which means in Hebrew to scream, like a high piercing voice, which is like a narrow voice, sort of, but it is actually derived from the word tzariach, which means a narrow tower. A narrow, tall tower, which is still used in chess for the... the castle is tzariach in Hebrew. We have even the term hatzaraha, to move the castle. So again, it's a narrow place, and sometimes like a dungeon, when you think of it. Then there's the word tzaraf, which is it's smeltering, separating the metal from the slags, from the ore, the ore from the slags, and finally, this is your department, and then the word tzarar, which is interesting. The word tzarar appears in Tanakh in two different contexts. One is tzror, which is a bundle, and the other one is an enemy, hatzarat tzorer etchem, but they're actually related. Because when you think of tzror, a bundle, it's a place that holds a lot of things in one place. And the tsar or tzorer is someone who puts a siege around a city and limits everyone to
like
confined.
Metzora.
Right. So those are nuances that have evolved from the word tsar, but they all have in their basis the word narrow. So based on that, I want to say that maybe the Metzora or the tzarat is the disease of being narrow-minded, of not seeing possibilities, and that definitely would lead to lashon hara. Because how is a person allowing himself to speak lashon hara? Because he's limited, because he doesn't see the greatness of the other person.
You could also
It boils down to Moshe also having a minimal mindset.
Right. So now if we go, let's go one by one. Right. So what with Moshe?
Lack
Hashem,
of faith is.
right? Hashem, it's like a lack of faith is being narrow-minded, because Hashem says, "Go to the Israelites, bring them out. I will help you." Oh, they will not listen to me. What do you mean? Try it; they'll listen to you, right? It's hard to say it about Moshe, but the Torah says it.
He hadn't risen to greatness yet.
Right. The Torah allows us to read this into the story.
Wasn't there somewhere where Moshe thought you had the wrong guy for this?
Yeah. But anyway, his tzarat, his leprosy was instantaneous, because right away God says, "Okay, no, this could change." And Moshe is okay. He learns, he goes, he changes. Miriam, her.
Hers lasted a few days, if I remember.
Right, 7 days. It's a longer period, right? As we progress through Tanakh, each one has a longer period, because they don't learn from the.
From respected somebody.
Yes. What happened? What happened to her? It says, "V'tedaber Miriam ve'Aaron beMoshe." They spoke about Moshe and his second wife. She was a Cushite woman, probably from Kush, from the border of Iran, and they said, "Why is he marrying her? And who is he to be a prophet? We are also prophets. God spoke to us as well." And it's interesting that Miriam's name is derived from the word mar, which is bitter. So there is a certain bitterness there, and that kind of criticism also stems from narrow-mindedness, and that is not willing to see the difference. It's that someone else might be greater than you, as great as Miriam was, and she was a prophet, but Moshe had a different level altogether. He was the one.
panim el panim.
What? Panim el panim. He also was the one who was willing to go and try to arouse the Israelites to start getting out of Egypt. Yes. Right?
But from what I've learned, Moshe was not always. He was very argumentative with God, with Hashem.
Yeah, he always. Yeah. Yeah, Moshe argues. That's
He
good.
learned that from Miriam.
No, but the way I learned it, that Miriam got angry because it wasn't Moshe's first wife. He was marrying somebody else, and says, "This is not your wife."
Someone else.
It could be that. We don't know. We don't know exactly what is the reason, but I think that the Torah deliberately leaves it somewhat obscure, because you realize very fast that's not the point. They don't care about the wife whatsoever. It's like, how it starts? It's like the two brothers get together and says, "We're really concerned about our brother and his family life." And then the next thing you know is, why was I not chosen to be the leader? So it's just sort of an excuse, a pretext to say something else.
It's almost like tit for tat.
Yeah.
Arrogant citizens.
Aaron is
No, arrogant.
Oh, arrogant, right. So there is
Why?
no. To be arrogant is also to be narrow-minded, because there's only one way to say, like, I'll do it my way. And this is what happens to Naaman. Naaman we don't know what happened, what led to his leprosy, but we know what happened when he was supposed to be cured. He comes to Elisha. Elisha says, "Go to the river, dip in the river, and you'll be cured." Now the river is right there. He has to cross it, actually, on his way to Syria. But he refuses to do so. He will cross it over the bridge and not dip in the water. And why? Because if it's about rivers, I have my rivers. Now, you already came. He made the whole trip from Syria to Israel, because how did it start? He was sick, and they didn't have a cure for him. And there was a little girl who was captive from Eretz Israel, and she worked at Naaman's household, and she told her mistress, there's a prophet in Israel who could cure him. The king of Aram sends messengers to the king of Israel, and he says, I'm going to send you my general, please cure him. The king of Israel is so ignorant that he doesn't even know that there's a prophet that could do that. And he says, he's looking for an excuse to come and attack me. The prophet here...
during King David?
No, there's King Yoram. That's way after David. It's about 200 years later. So at the time of Elisha. So Elisha sends a message to the king. He says, what? Yesh Navi B'Yisrael. I'm here. Send him over to me. And then he does. So it was a long process. The girl told the master. Then they told the king. Then the king sent a letter to Israel. And then the letter came back. Now he travels. So you invested all this. What does it take to go and dip in the Jordan River? No.
Sounds like a bad game of telephone.
It sounds as if he wanted to stick his finger in his eye.
Yeah. What do you have to lose, right? He's like terminally ill. They tell him all you have to do is smoke a cigarette. He says, okay, it doesn't make sense. Okay, but try it. What do you have to lose? So finally, his servants convince him to dip in the river, and it says, "Vayashav besaro kifsar na'ach katon." His skin turned pure as of a little baby, and he rushes back to the prophet saying, "Thank you." But up until that moment, he was as narrow-minded as can be. Skeptical, narrow-minded.
It sounds like leprosy is a disease for narrow-minded.
Yeah, it is. No, it is a call on people to open their mind. And from your book, like I know that you dealt with a lot of narrow-minded people, like that pilot, right? It's like that people who insist this is how we do it. Don't tell me how to do it. Open up to no. Now, who else we have left? The 4 people who were out the gate, right? They were outcasts. But when they see the field of Aram, the camp of Aram, they all escaped. They go and they feast and they eat, and only after they satisfied all their needs and they're satiated, they say, the poor people in the city, we have to take care of them as well. What were you thinking up until that moment? Again, it is only seeing themselves, not being able to see others. And Oziah, of course, is his arrogance, again, stems from his inability to see that different roles for different people, and he has to develop what he has to do. Interestingly, I read this a while ago in this book, Creativity, by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. It's a Hungarian name, so don't blame me. And he also wrote a book called Flow. Now, he's a professor of psychology in the University of Chicago. And he speaks about something which he calls domains of knowledge. He speaks about creativity in general. This book explores creativity. And he says the existence of domain is perhaps the best evidence of human creativity. The fact that we have different domains of knowledge is our human creativity, because otherwise we would have been limited to the one thing we know that we have inherited from our parents, as most animals do. He says the fact that calculus and Gregorian chants exist means that we can experience patterns of order that were not programmed into our genes by biological evolution. And here's this. It says each domain expands the limitations of individuality and enlarges our sensitivity and ability to relate to the world. Each person is surrounded by an almost infinite number of domains that are potentially able to open up new worlds and give new powers to those who learn their rules. So I read this passage and I say, wait a second, is this a book about psychology or about mysticism, New Age? But no, it is, sort of solid science. What he speaks about is that when you're willing to open yourself up to new fields of knowledge, to new possibilities, to hear, let's say, criticism from people, to realize that maybe at a certain point this is not what's for you, but you can search growth in other places. It opens your mind. This is exactly like in a way the message that Torah says. So now I go back to the ritual on chapter 14, and I want to see it that way. The Kohen tells they take 2 live birds. That's the potential of life, and the cedar and the hyssop. The shnit olat, the crimson stuff, is a symbol of humility, because this is you take something that comes from a lowly creature and you dye wool with it, and now it becomes a glorious garment. Cedar and hyssop are the two poles, the mightiest tree and the lowliest plant. They take them all together. The Kohen slaughters the bird, and that's a message to the Metzora.
Just one?
One bird over the water. He says, you have killed your creativity, your potential of growth by being narrow-minded, and that's like contaminating the water that are the liquid of life. And then they sprinkle the blood on him, as if to say there's something that stained you, maybe, but with that approach, and they let the bird fly free. And that's a symbol. Now it's a positive symbol. It's not one that says this is what you caused. Your impurity or your gossip goes everywhere, but rather it says you have the potential to go wherever you want. Like we say, spread your wings. And I think that it's a very positive message. And in this way, we see the tzarat as a call on people really not to. Now, what is also what happens to the Metzora until the moment of purification? Torah says, "Badad yeshev mihoza machane Moshe." He's confined. He has to sit lonely outside the camp to realize what happens when you limit yourself, you cut yourself from the world. This is where you get. So this is my theory. I hope to develop it more.
What is interesting,
interesting, right? Like I'm sorry, I should have left it, but like what you said, it's not the final stage.
that's right.
He still has to go back and sit out,
Almost like an initiation.
right? And he has, and he shaves all his hair
That's right.
completely, like the whole body, and that is again to maybe to show him that hair grows again, can grow anywhere, right? And there's like a sprout of energy or creativity that can come from different places. Anyway, this is like one symbolic approach.
It's interesting
Yeah.
because you're told even when you've got a bereavement that you don't tear your hair out.
Right.
And suddenly here, you're shaving everything. It's a total opposite
Right.
of normal.
Right. So interesting because when the Torah says that you don't tear your hair, is what happens when people used to tear their hair, pull their hair as a sign of mourning, hair would never grow back. It would leave bald patches. Torah says this you don't do. In cleansing, you remove that outer layer, but it grows again pure. Meaning
Because you're just cutting it away. You're not
cutting it away. We're not ripping it out. Yes. Okay, so let me conclude this here, and then